We've got John. It says King of Prussia.
Yeah.
Is that a real place?
It's around Valley Forge, close to Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for calling.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. Basically, I'm calling. A friend wanted me to sort of try out an argument that I have for the existence of like a human soul, the spirit having like reason, free will, and consciousness.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
first,
reason, free will, and consciousness, that's 3 big ones.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I wanted to try to just make a few points briefly, if that's okay.
Okay.
Just about like my understanding of the idea from earlier in the show where like religion and the poverty thing, how they correlate to each other. I personally think that it is more like being in that state will lead you more to an awareness of your dependence on God and not vice versa. I think like the fact that there's poverty in a lot of those areas is due to like soil infertility, population density, the fact that they didn't have the same resources and inventors from the Industrial Revolution, things like that.
Okay, that's
right.
that's one of 2 takes on it. My question to that is, you're convinced that it's poverty that leads people to these more religious positions.
I think that's one factor that can be.
Sure,
yeah.
sure. My follow-up question is, do you think that has any ties to whether or not those religions are true?
I don't really think so, but I wasn't really planning to go there.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to check.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And you mentioned something about like the cosmic joke of our immortal life. I think of that more as like a preparation period. Like I'm not universalist where everybody has the same destination in the afterlife necessarily. One of the previous callers said something about the Christian Bible study. I think, it depends on the denomination what their approach to the Bible is. And of course, in any religion, you'll have believers who are more or less honest or sinful or even knowledgeable about their own beliefs.
Okay.
But to get into my argument here, and I kind of see this as sort of a background for belief in God, although that's not what I'm trying to argue here, but I kind of see, like, what reasons do I have to believe in religion? I think, to a certain extent, it's rational to believe other people and other traditions. Like, why would they bother going through the centuries with these beliefs? Cosmological things, like who started the Big Bang, if there was something like that. Again, you said, like, I'm posing the question as a who, but...
Well, I'm a little confused, actually, because...
Yeah.
You said you were going to argue for the existence of a soul, and that it wasn't necessarily... You weren't going to necessarily argue for the existence of God, and yet the first couple things you pop off are the argument from popularity, which is why would they believe these things for so long, to which the answer is because they didn't know any better. Yeah. And then the cosmological argument, which is one of many arguments that have been formally presented that are all logically flawed at some level.
Right.
Whether it's the anthropic principle or teleological. I mean, if you want to go down that road, we can, but there are a bunch of callers waiting. We only got 20 minutes left, so if you want to just get to the souls one, that'd be great.
So really, I was just going to say those are sort of my own ways to move on from the basic point here, which is like, I did not create myself, but I believe I have a spirit, so therefore I have to look elsewhere. So my argument as far as the spirit itself, or the soul...
Hey, I got to pause you again, John.
Yeah.
And I do this for a reason, and it's because if there's a point of contention early on in a discussion, and I sit here and let you get all the way to the end, by the time we get back to it, you've developed from that. Right. So you said that you didn't create yourself, and you believe you have a soul. Okay, right. I agree. You didn't create yourself. I think we'd all be in agreement that you are the product of your mother and father. Mm-hmm. And the second thing that you said, where you believe you have a soul, if you're going to start off with that as a presupposition, you've kind of already set yourself up to argue in a circle.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I draw that from the argument that I'm about to go into.
Oh, okay. So you just stated the conclusion up front. Go ahead.
Well, so what are you defining? What's your definition of a soul?
So, my friend pointed out that I'd probably have to be pretty good with that. I think it's like the non-material, self-conscious aspect of your being that incorporates free will and reasoning, like the mind.
Okay, but we already know that the brain's responsible for reasoning.
Well, we know that
And
at least what I would say, the soul makes use of the brain.
Oh, you think?
And draws from our perceived knowledge from our senses.
So the soul is the non-material part of your being that uses your brain.
Yeah.
Okay. What reason do you have for thinking that even exists?
For the soul.
Because I'm curious, because in a lot of ways I could say that a soul is the non-material part of this cup that keeps the water in.
Right. So
I already know that that function's done by the cup. So what justification do I have for adding a soul as a non-material, non-demonstrable aspect of this cup that does the function that we already know the cup does?
Well, you could say that it never acts on its own behalf, but then we get into the argument for perception of mind in other beings, this hypersensitive agency detection device theory of mind.
Yeah.
But the point I wanted to get to is that I think in our own consciousness, the fact that we have an understanding of what, even discussing this with you, the fact that I say the word soul or spirit and include these other things, consciousness and free will, I think just the fact that we have an understanding of what they mean sort of proves that we have some non-physical element.
Really?
That can,
so
that
the
can
fact
convey
that
to us the fact that there is meaning there.
So John, the fact that when I say unicorn, you understand what it means? Does that mean unicorns exist?
No, but here's
why. All right,
why.
so that debunks what you just said, I think, right?
Well, here's why you believe you... Well, so with a unicorn, basically, you have the image of a horse...
No. All right, we could pick something entirely different. What we're talking about is we've defined a term, and it has entered the public consciousness as a meme. That doesn't point to whether or not that doesn't tell us whether or not it points to anything that actually exists.
Well, here's
you can
what
do
I'm saying.
the unicorn model.
As an example.
You can do the unicorn.
That represents things that we do know the meaning of: a horse, a body, a shape, a dimension, length, width, volume. Mass, whatever. But all these other things are things that we know of that are not spiritual. Right. But when I say spirit or soul, there's no non-material, or there's no material things that add up and convey the meaning.
Which is why we had you define it at the beginning. Because when you say spirit or soul, I have no idea what you're talking about until you define it. All I know is that spirit and soul are words used by people to describe a number of things, and they all mean it slightly differently, which is why I have this huge problem with the word spirituality, because it's a useless term. So we had you define soul as what it is, and you gave us a definition. That's why I have an understanding of what you're talking about.
Okay,
it's not because it points to something real.
But tell me why you understand free will.
Why I understand free will.
How
I don't
does
know.
that convey meaning to
Probably
you?
because I was taught the concept and have debated it a number of times.
Yes, but why did the original people who developed the concept come up with that concept?
Well, they're describing the limitations of behavior.
That's very vague.
We make up words.
We have a will. Where does that where do we derive that from?
Desire?
It's a brain state.
How is it a brain state? You haven't identified a gene that makes that happen. You haven't pointed to the exact fabric of the brain.
John, you don't have to identify a gene to know that something's a brain state. What you have to do is use an EKG.
No, see, you're arguing from the same sort of abstract points that you're accusing me of arguing from.
What? Sorry, what?
You're using the same sort of abstract points that you're accusing me of by saying brain state.
There's nothing abstract about a brain state.
No, it's not. It's not abstract at all. The fact that we don't completely understand it doesn't mean that we cannot test and identify discrete electrochemical brain states. We do it all the time.
But we can never prove the direct relationship between every one of those and a behavior.
So what?
So it's incomplete. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it proves the
So you're
soul.
saying you're making a great big argument from ignorance that since we don't know everything, you can then posit something else that we don't know, and it suddenly becomes viable. Sorry, that doesn't work.
Okay, let me try to sort of reiterate my explanation there. It's not the fact that I'm pointing out this other alternative, the soul or spirit or free will, reason. What I'm saying is the fact that we can get a meaning from words like free will and consciousness shows that we have those things.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We give the words meaning. We have invented the words and associated them with things, and we define them. We use them in specific ways. It doesn't in any way.
What if I say belongadonk? Does that mean anything to you?
John, it doesn't in any way demonstrate that the thing we're talking about is real. And that's what the unicorn demonstration was for, or I could have picked Kermabelfluffen. And if I tell you that a Kermabelfluffen is a particular type of alien that doesn't map to anything physical here, you have the concept in your brain. And once everybody else knows what it is, whether it's a fairy or a leprechaun or a Kermabelfluffen, the meme exists, but the item does not. Do not confuse the map for the place.
Correct. And I agree that for that same reason, the, what's it called, ontological argument for God is not valid.
Okay.
However,
I agree on that.
Back to the, well, for one thing, I believe the fact that we have this spirit allows us to be wrong about the spirit.
Stop.
So your alien non-material thing we can be wrong about because we still have the non-material idea.
John, you don't get to say the fact that we have this spirit. You have to actually demonstrate that before I'm going to let you call it a fact.
Well, I meant the fact that we have the word and the meaning.
The fact that we have the word does what?
It's along with the alien thing that you said, like the fact that we can, okay, not the fact, but I mean, it is a fact for some of us that we understand the meaning for that word. And I think that with your alien example, like if you can associate that with something that's not physical, I would conjecture that that's because we have this soul that lets us think about things that are non-material.
You're only just defining the soul as non-physical. I'm saying that every attribute that people give to a soul we can identify physically, except for the part that we can't test at all, which is the idea that it continues after we're dead. You talk about the soul being. You talk about this,
physically to where free will derives.
John, you talk about the soul being responsible for thought, reasoning, free will, consciousness. Right. Those are all things that we can identify as brain states. You have no reason.
Can. You claim to make that, but we can't. You can see activity in the brain, but that's not what consciousness is. That's just coming up with the memory stored and the way we move our arm and everything going on at the same time.
John, do you know anything about cognitive neuroscience?
A little bit.
Well, then
Google.
How can you make these statements that these brain states don't map to specific like intent or emotions or what?
Because I'm aware of the progress of the research in that field.
No, I don't think you are.
About it to say that.
I can guarantee you're not. For example, something we've talked about a number of times. One of the most brilliant people on the planet in this area, V.S. Ramachandran, had done studies in split brain patients where you can question both brains and they have distinct personalities. And in one case, one half of the brain was a theist, and in another case, the other half of the brain was an atheist. Now, when they split that patient's brain, did they get it two souls?
Wait, can you say that again?
A split brain patient where the corpus callosum's been split divides the brain, and each half of our brain controls a different part of the body. And I'll get the hemispheres confused, but let's say for the sake of the argument that it's the left hemisphere that controls speech and the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body. In any case, whether I got that backwards or not, in a patient like that, they were able to actually ask it questions because you're going to hear out of both ears. And they would have the one half of the brain would be able to answer with the mouth, and the other half of the brain would be able to answer by taking the right hand and pointing to answers. And in this case, one half of the brain was a theist. When asked if they believed in God, it said yes, and the other half of the brain said no. Now, did that human being who had its brain split get two souls, and how did that happen?
The soul tapped into the brain in the one side and not the other.
Okay.
And you base this on what?
I can only say that that's possible. I can't say it's necessarily true, but you can't disprove it either.
So what you're saying...
It's aside from the main point that I'm trying to make.
John, stop. First of all, saying you can't disprove it is not an argument in favor of you. But second of all, what you did just do implicitly is state that this person has half a brain that does all of the things that you attribute to the other half of the brain, and it does it without a soul. We're done. The rest is just posturing. Sorry.